Good Wednesday morning, market chameleons, and everyone joining us for the first time. Thanks for coming by and checking out the Market Chameleon pre-market show with this man, Mitri Pargamonic. How you doing, D?
Good morning, Will. How are you?
Good. You want to start with the disclaimer?
Yep. Good morning, everyone. Before we get started, keep in mind, Will and I and Market Chameleon, we're not a registered investment advisor and we're not a broker dealer. We're not telling you what to do. We're just sharing ideas. If you need advice, call your registered investment advisor, call your broker. That's what they're there for. There's the disclaimer.
Excellent.
And I'm going to share my screen. If you're joining us for the first time, Will and I, we do these shows in the morning to try to help answer questions you guys may have about the Market Chameleon tools, the data, the analytics. If you have a question, type it into the live chat on YouTube. Will's watching it. He'll read it back to me. And to take a couple minutes and give you guys a chance to put those questions in, we'll start out looking at the pre-market report, see if we could get insights, what's going on in the pre-market hours, and then we'll move on to the questions. All right. So pre-market report. These are stocks trading in the pre-market hours. Up top here, we start out, it's a calendar view that does allow you to go back in time and see what happened in the pre-market on that date. So far today, November 29th, this is what's going on. We got 575 stocks trading higher in the pre-market hours, 243 stocks trading lower. As far as the volume goes, we got 132 million shares trading on up volume versus 60 million on down volume. And if we convert that volume to dollar value, we got $2.9 billion worth of stock trading higher versus $500 million of stock trading lower. So far, looks like the trading in the pre-market hours is leaning towards bullish sentiment. Okay. Let's look at it from a couple more perspectives, and then we'll move on to the questions. I'm going to scroll down, and now we have a list of stocks. We have a list of our most active stocks in the pre-market hours, our biggest percentage gainers, biggest percentage decliners. These are stocks that have to meet certain thresholds to make it on this list. We have 134 stocks that made our biggest percentage gainers list, 45 on our biggest percentage decliners. That also points to a bullish sentiment in a pre-market hours from this perspective. If we look at the list, you'll see that this list does have stocks in there that are ETFs, low cap stocks, could be a closed-end fund, any security listed on a major U.S. exchange if it's trading in the pre-market hours and it meets those thresholds that we set for liquidity, price change, and so forth, it can make this list. To narrow it down to a smaller group of stocks, we're going to use the filters here up top. And if you do have a watch list, you could filter by your watch list, just drop it down, select the watch list you have. We're going to use this one in ETF as an example. And when you click on it, you get a drop down menu to select from the first one, SPY, that's the S&P 500 ETF. When you click on it, the list below gets gets filtered by stocks that are holdings in the SPY ETF, which are the S&P 500 constituents. And here we see 21 stocks made our percentage gainers list. 6 made our percentage decliners list. So from this angle, it also points to bullish sentiment in the pre-market trading. Okay, so that's really quickly kind of getting a sense of what's going on in the pre-market hours. What are people doing? How are they trading from a high level? And so far, we looked at it from 3 different perspectives, and the trading looks like it's pointing to some bullish sentiment. We gave it a couple minutes. Will, if you have a question, I'll take it now.
All right. Well, we had a question hanging out there from the last 2 days from Michael about starting a name in a watch list. How do you do that?
Okay, yeah. So one of the things that you could do when you register is create a watch list in your account, or you could have several watch lists. I'm going to show you how to create one, but on top of having a watch list that you could go back and look at, you will be able to use some of the tools around the website to filter by your watch list, or you could create watch lists from other tools. But let's just go and create a basic one. So I'm going to go here, my watch list. And on this screen, right, if you go down here, you just put, so you have it under your account, under this little shadow guy. And first you have to give the watch list a name, because that's how you identify your watch list because if you have multiple watch lists, you could select from them, and usually a watch list contains a group of stocks that you want to maintain. It could be a sector, it could be an industry, or it could meet some other types of requirements, market cap, whatever it is. You create that group, and you want to give it a name and an identifier. So you just click on that button, create new, and then give it a name up here. Okay, so whatever it is, my technology stocks or whatever it is, you got to give it a name. Once you give it a name, I'm not going to do that right now, but it's stocks or options, so you could create an options watch list as well. But by default, it's selected to stocks. And then right in this box below, here are the instructions. You could type in, the symbols like this, Apple, and then comma, type in another one, NVIDIA, comma, Microsoft, Fab 7, and then hit save. Once you hit save, just refresh your screen and it'll be in here. All right. So that's how quickly you could do it. Now, let's say you have a list of stocks. This saved my last one. Let's say you have a list of stocks somewhere in a notepad or whatever. You could copy it and paste it in here. So you don't have to retype it, as long as it's, either comma delineated or space or whatever, whatever the instructions say up here. You could copy, paste it in here, right? These are the instructions, and then hit save. So that's a quick way to do it. And over here, you could watch, if you pull it up, you have these different tabs to just quickly give you some analysis, upcoming dividends, upcoming earnings, what are the options doing, open interest, news. You could come in here and take a look at it and just monitor it in here. So I have all my S&P 500 sector ETFs. That's the one I have selected. So you could see here, I have this data in my watch list. Could even download this data, refresh the table. What else can we do though with the watch list? So up here, you have a view of all your watch lists. So you give them names, and these are the number of stocks in them. These are the number of stocks that are up, percentage of them that are up, percentage that are down. Obviously, it would be the opposite. This is how the median price, how they all perform today in 2 weeks, 3 months, 6 months. So let's say you created a watch list. My best high growth, my best value stocks, my best undervalued, whatever you have it, they'll show up here. And then you could kind of see how they perform versus each other on a median basis, year to date, 52 weeks high and low, what percentage of them are your 52-week high, percentage from 52-week low, and you got some here fundamentals. So that's just a quick way to not only pull up your watch list and see what's going on within your watch list, but here you could see how the group is performing versus each other. All right, so let's say you created a watch list, a basket of stocks. I don't know, let's say you created a basket of stocks, defense stocks, right? Maybe like, weapons manufacturer, whatever. And then you could track that group versus other benchmarks. All right, so that's from here. But what else can we do? So let's say we have a watch list and we are on our, I'm going to go to a screener. Let's say I'm on the stock screener. And as I'm on the stock screener, I got all these stocks, 462, and I'm going to screen them out, maybe by dividend, whatever. Maybe I just want to see, I'm going to pick from my watch list. So the first thing I want to do is pick my watch list. Let's go to the S&P 500 that I was doing, S&P 500 sectors. I select that. So now you could see here, these are my 12 stocks, right? So now I see my watch list in the stock screener, and then I could further screen it, or I could compare using this data. So I could see here the technical indicators, SPY is in an uptrend, XLK, technology, that's in an uptrend. Financial sector just did a bullish crossover, consumer, that these are in an uptrend, right? A couple of them bullish, so none of them are bearish. Some of them are in a strong uptrend. Others just recently made a bullish crossover. What about other things? Like here's the performance, which was kind of in your watch list, but now you have a 5-year, 3-year, year-to-date, 7-day, 6-day. So you can kind of see here more stats on that watch list. And then you could go through these tabs like so. And maybe you want to, maybe out of this watch list, you want to say, well, which stocks are, so you see these are filters, the tabs. Let's say we want to know which stocks from the opening price are up more than 0.25%. So click on that. So none of them. So none of them are up more than 0.25%. Well, maybe because we didn't open yet, right? And they were pretty much unchanged. So this would be here, technicals, right, from the opening, right? So let's say which stocks in this watch list, so this is yesterday's up, right, from the opening are down more than 0.25%, right? Not 25, quarter of 1% below. So here, 2 of them in my watch list yesterday, from the opening price, so not on the day, from the opening price, what happened? They sold off by more than 0.25%. So XLK sold off by 0.3, XLRE sold off by 0.3. So you could see here on the day, they were still up, right? Because they gapped up in the morning and then, oh, I'm sorry, this is the opening jump. This is the opening gap. They gapped down in the morning and then rallied. So this is from the open. So let me change that. All right. So this is the opening gap. Let's put that back. So let's say from the open, right, wherever they moved up at the open, down, let's say I just want to know what happened after the opening, because that's where I'm interested. That's where the flow of money starts, after, where the VWAPs kick in, the options traders kick in, all those, the news cycle got repriced in the morning. What's going on? So let's say I want to look at stocks that are trading from the opening up by more than 0.25%. So that I'm using this filter. And keep in mind, this is my watch list, right? I'm only looking at this group of stocks in my watch list. So here I got 6 stocks here that, so you can see some of them opened down and then rallied from the open. So this one, XLK, up 0.5%. XLY up 0.7 of 1%, 0.5%, 0.5%. This one almost rallied at 1%, 0.9% from the open. So XLRE, I think that's the REIT. At the open, it was down 0.3%. After the open, it increased by 0.9% from the opening price. So that's one way to use it. And of course, as you're going through the website, wherever you have in my watch list, like we talked about in a pre-market, you could use that filter. Once you set up your group and your watch list, you could use that filter other parts of the website. So that's the more, like, for example, if we wanted to go in here and use the news scanner, and you're trying to look at the press releases and you wanted to see, is there anything, in one of my watch lists that, low P stocks, any of them in here? So 2 of them had news. These 2, right, had news in my watch list. And then I could just read what the press releases are. If you click on it, it'll open it up and let you read it. So these are in the pre-market. So these are here. So these are in the pre-market. I just switched it to the pre-market change. And these are news coming out in the pre-market. And, that's how auto manufacturing here. Any news on auto manufacturing stocks. So here, GM, Tesla, a bunch of them had news. So you could see here, I screened by my watch list. I have it on the pre-market change. So I could see that some of them, GM is up 9.6% in pre-market. And I could see that, let me close this. Here's the news related to GM reinstates earnings guidance, announces $10 billion accelerated share repurchase, and 33% dividend increase. So my auto manufacturers, I could see they're kind of all up. GM looks like I could sort this, right? So I could sort this. GM is up a lot. And here's the news. TM up 1.5%. Also some news. Tesla up 1.2%. Some news about its Cybertruck. So this is a quick way to say what's going on in my group in a pre-market hours, and are there news, what are the news press releases coming out that may be impacting the stock, right? So we went over how to create now let's say you are interested in creating a watch list because you're on a stock screener. Let's say you filtered out a group, right? Let's say you filtered out, you use some kind of requirements, like, shares outstanding, whatever you did, shares float. You created, low PE ratios, whatever it is, and you wanted to create a watch list from this. Well, see these little pluses, and over here, these are in your watch list. If you create that, you click on it, you could create a new watch list right from here. So you could add it to an existing watch list, or you can go down here and say new watch list. So if you say new watch list right from here, give it a name, and then add that symbol to it. Okay. So either you could add this to an existing watch list or create a new watch list right from the screen. Hopefully that helped answer.
Yeah, that was awesome. Michael did show up, so that question was for Michael. Asked it yesterday. We do have Rob, who's been patiently holding to ask his question about Edge. I'm going to let Rob in now.
Okay.
Hey, Rob, thanks for coming in and asking the question. Good morning.
Hey, Rob, how's it going?
Good morning. Good. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Good morning.
Okay. Good morning. That was great on the watch list. Before we leave that, there's a question I had was, is there a kind of a universal grouping that, like, instead of going with the little plus sign by plus sign by plus sign, you can click and get them all included to your watch list. In other words, if you pulled up an ETF like say Diamonds that has the Dow Jones 30 Industrials, and you want the underlying on those, can you just click and pop all of those stocks into your watch list? Is there a way to do that?
No, I don't think we have a function like that. If you have it, like let's say you have it in a CSV file, the symbols, you could just kind of, copy.
You could do that by the cut and paste, but there's no way to in other words, universally, like those little plus signs, if there was a trigger that you could click and say, select all for my watch list, because on the stocks, on the ETF stocks, if we call those up now, you can see the underlying stocks that are in the ETF. You built that in sometime like a year ago or something.
Right.
And that's great, because then you can see what the ETF has in it and which stocks in that ETF. You could build your own ETF out of the best stocks in that, but it'd be very helpful to have just an ability to click. Like here, I've got, XLE, for instance. What are the stocks in that? I want to put all the oil companies in XLE onto a watch list.
Yeah.
And just immediately be able to click and put them in. That would be really cool. Well, anyway, that's something I guess maybe in the future. But I was wondering, we've explained this. I know you've explained Edge and the way it works. And this is probably a elementary for all of us elementary kind of investors. The idea, it seems like when we go to the calculator and we look at the Edge, what my question is that's always, is it not always based on the history of what the price of that option is? In other words, historically the option was worth $5. Today it's worth $6. So if you're buying, it's a negative edge. If you're selling, it'll be a positive edge. That's sort of what I'm getting at.
Well, let's pull it out to show me kind of like, so
okay,
stock, let's go to it just so we could all visualize.
You could just SPY would be fine. SPY.
All right, let's say SPY. Okay.
Or Tesla or anything.
Okay. And what am I going to, the options chain?
Yeah, just go to the options or go to your trade data under the summary up there. Before you get to options chain, let's just load a trade. Trade ideas right here. Trade ideas, the third tab over.
Yep.
Yeah, just load anything.
Okay.
And here we have 104-cent edge. Now this is going to be a debit on the call. So that means you're buying that call cheaper than historically it's been valued. Is that a correct way to think about that?
Yeah. So for this particular one, right? So when let me go, because some people may have not seen these before, right? So I'm just going to explain to them what's going on here. And when we look at a particular option stock, or it could be any financial asset, a bond, a piece of real estate, right? Or business. And, there's there could be a market value where somebody's offering to sell, right? Like here's the market, or to buy, like there's a market price. And there's usually, in a financial, or everywhere I know, right? The financial studies, there's ways to put a value on that financial asset. Like we could put a value on somebody's house. We could put a value in somebody's business. We could, people even put a value on, sports players, right? Of, some sports players get $20 million per year, some get $5 million. So there are ways to put a value to it. And it could be a theoretical value, right? Because like there's no exact way to say this is definitely, sports player, whatever it is. But there's just like when you buy a house, you get an appraiser, right? An appraiser, but he can't give you an exact to the penny, right? He's just saying like this is where, he's taking average prices or whatever. He says this is like, you know, he comes up with the number, but it could be a range. So when we look at option prices, stock prices, whatever, we come up and say, okay, here's a market price. So we know where the market is trading right now. So that's the market fair value. You know, there are people willing to buy it and offer and whatever. Just like,
and is the market price always the center between the ask and the bid?
So the way we set it up here is that we on these trade idea cards, when we take a snapshot of the market, let's say a long call, right, buying a call, we always take the worst price you would get executed at. Like they may you pay the whole spread. So that would be the offer on this call, right? Because it's a long call, so we're looking at the offer price. But we always assume that as a trader, you're going to try to do better, right? But we're just
I'm just wondering which side that comes from.
Yeah, so we're trying to analyze it if you just went, you know, and paid the full spread.
Instantly, you paid what?
Yeah, to get the offer, right? So to buy it, you'd have to pay the offer, and that because the offer's firm, that's where you can get executed. So then we say, okay, well, that's the market price. It's the market fair value, but we know that markets fluctuate, right? They're going to be moving around based on supply and demand. It's continuous trading, and you know, you could have, you know, an implied volatility low or high, or they're moving around all the time, right? As people are trading and moving risk around and hedging and all that. So we'll say, so now that we know the market price, we're trying to say, okay, how far is it away from a perceived value? Like where do I think that this option, in this case, it's not a strategy, it's an option, right? Where do I think it could, you know, it should be priced around some benchmark, and how far away is it from that benchmark? Okay, so
and so
then I have to create a, huh?
My question then is the benchmark drawn from historical valuation, or is it a historical valuation projecting what future valuation might be?
Right. So this theoretical value, right? And I want to get around. There's no one method of doing it. Okay. There's no one way of doing it. Just like, you know, appraising a house, right? There's no one method, because you could take, you know, average prices. You could look at what it costs to replace the house. If you had to build it today, you could compare it to rents versus. There's no one way, and there's no one data set that everybody will look at, because every data analyst, every researcher, they're going to look at the data. They could look at different data sets. They could combine data sets differently. So I just want to make sure you understand. There's no one, you know, rule to do this, right? You're taking data and you're using it the best you can to come up with a reasonable, you know, valuation model. So what this is doing, okay, on this trade card is using one method and as a starting point. And the method it's using is saying that, okay, if we looked at the historical behavior, right, of, in this case, SPY, right? If we looked at how the stock historically moves around, and if we applied similar conditions, basically, if we said that, you know, this option has X amount of days to go, this strike is X amount percentage away from the stock price, you know, and there's other conditions in there where, you know, with if there's earnings or no, SPI doesn't have earnings. So we put all these similar conditions in history that so far we could anticipate going forward, right? Because we know how many days left, how many trading days are left until this option expires. Right. We know how far away the strike is from the current price, right? We know if there's earnings coming out. So if we know certain things, then we could apply it to our analysis. And then we take those conditions and we look back in history and say, if we look back in history and took all those observations that are similar, right? All those instances, and we calculated what the stock behavior did, what did it do, from start to finish, then we say, okay, using that as our guidance, right? We don't know what it's going to do going forward. We have no idea, right? It's like trying to predict the football game. We have no idea until it's played, but we're trying to use guidance based on historical data, right? To give us some benchmark to look at, right? Like, for example, the next football game, they're not going to score 1 million points, right?
Right.
That would be crazy. That's never happened. It would be unreasonable. But somebody who never, like my wife, doesn't watch football, she might think that is reasonable, right? So we need benchmarks to say, okay, what do we think? Let's say we're trying to predict the total score of the game, So we're trying to use that data to, because they actually have that over and under, right? So that's what we're trying to do, is say, okay, if we took those instances historically and said that those historical data points, even though we know it's no guarantee of future success, but if we use them, what would be our benchmark, and how far away is this? Because it would be unreasonable to think SPY is going to go up 1,000,000% or go down to zero, right? And the stock market just shuts down. But we're trying to create these benchmarks and see, well, if we use the history and we said, if it behaves something similar, right? What is the value of this call, right? So we took the average value and we see it's $1.59. So right now we're comparing it to the market price and saying, okay, so maybe there's justification that volatility is going lower. Now we have our benchmark and we see that this is below, right? So the 78 cents is below the $1.59. And so then we have to think, is that justified? Maybe it is, because it's our starting point, right? This is our starting point. And then we do research, say, okay, maybe it's an opportunity, maybe it's not, maybe it's still too high price, but what else, can we think of? And maybe, it's a seasonality trend, maybe that there are other things in there that we have to handicap. Holidays are coming up in December, maybe we'll have lower volatility. We just went up 10%, or something. What did SPY? Let's just take a look at it. So SPY just in the month of November is up 8.8%. Is it going to slow down? How does December usually look like? So you could see here, if I'm just looking at November versus December, historically December, was, if we looked at the count, just from seasonality alone, that part doesn't take into account. Looks like December could, not be as hot, not as, bullish as you've seen in November or even previous months. So the idea there is that we have a starting point to look at it from some kind of a benchmark, right, that we use. And then there are things that history or this is not taken into consideration, that you'd want to then say, well, how much can I handicap it, and is this still reasonable or not reasonable? So the cards are helpful to people who are looking for a certain strategy. Like, let's say I'm already looking for a bull put spread, right? So let's go to bull put spread. So in my mind, I already want to do it in SPY because my analysis and stuff says, like, this is the strategy that fits my portfolio, fits my outlook. And, I want to check what's out there that looks like, it's trading above a historical benchmark, and that's where these trade ideas come in, as potentials, and of course you could go to the options chain, try to set it up and do the analysis too. But it's like a quick way to say, well, because these are generated by criteria that we already set. All right. So there are certain criteria it has to hit. And as starting points, as quick starting points, these could be places where you go, and then you could expand the legs or do different things to it, because sometimes a simple spread could turn into more legs, right? Or different ratios or whatever, but you start out with something and you build on top of it.
Right. Oh, that was great.
Yeah.
So I think the bell is rung. We're up 5 or 6 minutes.
We're
okay.
6 minutes in, and actually, Michael McRae had another question about the watch list. I'm hoping he can maybe come on tomorrow and ask about maybe it's something you can do in the screeners for stocks. He's looking for an alert relative to moving averages or something. But Michael, if you want to come on tomorrow's show, we'd gladly have you. Awesome job, Rob, as always. Appreciate you coming on and asking great questions. Awesome job, Dima.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Thanks everyone for joining. Stay safe out there. Have a great trading day. Hope to see you guys tomorrow.
Trade and peace, communities. Everyone have a great day.